Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear Review. And today we're looking at a vintage Casio watch. I'm a huge fan of Casio watches. And this vintage Casio watch, when I saw it, it was a flood of memories that came back to me. And it's the CMD40. The CMD40 is a calculator watch, but if you look very closely at the calculator watch, there are some control panels or some controls here that actually control a TV and a VCR. And it is so cool. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about this vintage Casio watch. We're not going to do the typical review of the size, fit, and finish, all that stuff. We're not going to do that. We're just going to have some fun with this Casio watch and just talk a little bit about the nostalgia of this watch. So this watch was released in 1992, and I remember when this watch came out thinking to myself, this is so cool that you can have some other tool on your wrist, not to mention the time, not to mention the calculator, but also to have a remote control on your wrist. Not just any remote control, this is a learning remote control. Yeah, you can actually program this remote control to control all kinds of different infrared controllers out there for TVs, VCRs. And for those of you that don't know what a VCR, it's a video cassette recorder, which is a tape that you put in or a cassette that you put into a player, and it's very low quality, and you get these little lines on there and you have to adjust the tracking. Anybody out there remember how to adjust the tracking on a VCR tape? So those are all great memories. And so this really brings me back to just the early 90s. It's just a magnificent looking watch. If this doesn't look like the early 90s to you, I mean, this is fantastic as far as the bracelet. It's a metal bracelet. They have different versions of this. They have the black resin case with the rubber strap. And when I saw this one, I was like, I'm going to go with the metal strap or the metal bracelet because I do like the Casio adjustment on here. It's a very simple adjustment, and the clasp itself has a little hook and a clip on it, and it does a great job of just fitting to the wrist. What I don't like about this particular bracelet, though, is just the size of these links, because that's how far you're moving this base plate, basically moving it up and down on the bracelet. But when I look at this thing, there's just so many cool things about it. So let's kind of get into some of the functions of this, because the look of this watch is fantastic. It's outstanding. It's a calculator watch. I love calculator watches. I had one when I was a kid. I've had a couple of them, actually. And this is another one that I have more of them now than I ever had when I was a kid. So let's take a look at some of the functions of this. All right, we're going to go through the functions real quick. We're going to go through the calculator function. I'm going to use the 5 and 5 over and over again. So we're going to do 5, and the top volume button is the addition symbol. 5, hit the lower right, equals 10. There we go. Clear button is this center button here. 5 minus 5, we get 0. Clear. 5 times 5 equals 25. Clear. And then 5 divided by 5, and we're going to get 1. So there's your functions, your algorithmic, or your basic calculator functions, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, moving on, we're going to go to the alarm function, and this center 3 o'clock button is going to turn on the daily alarm. It's going to turn on the hourly chime, or have both, or both off. You can adjust using this top button here as your adjustment for the time. Moving on from there, we get to the last function, which is the stopwatch function. Start. This is your start and stop function button here. And it only counts in seconds, no tenths or hundredths of a second. Start, stop. And then your reset button is up here. You also have a lap button here. But again, start and stop is right here. Now, as far as the overall function for doing the TV, you're going to have to get yourself set up in the TV function. And if you enter in the code for your television, then you can run these controls basically as they are set up. You also have the same thing with the VCR. It looks like a videotape there in the center. And then you also have the learning function. I'm not going to go through any of those because, frankly, for me, I didn't have to do that, so I don't really know much about it at this time. But there are great... We'll clear all that out. There's a great online Casio operation guide for the 1174, and there's all kinds of good information there to help you program your CMD40 for any of those kinds of things. So if you look at the far right-hand side, we'll do all the cool stuff first. You have the TV controls for the volume. You have the TV video formatting buttons so that when you press buttons, it's formatted for a TV or a VCR. You can have multiple buttons. You can have different buttons do different things for different components. So some TV functions may be on these buttons, and the VCR functions may be on a separate set of buttons. But with a learning remote control, you can program some of these buttons to do certain things. Now, there's also a way to type in the code for just an overall formatting of buttons, which I've done, and it works. And I have a Samsung television that I bought about 5 years ago, and it operates the channel changer, the volume, and the power on and off. It's amazing. So I've got some video here. I turned the TV off on my son as he was watching some TV.
What's going on?
Kind of a humorous little thing there. But at the same time, like, it's that easy. So you can type in the code and it formats a lot of these buttons, or you can also change this over and get to the learning function and program buttons in here. I'm not doing that because I don't need to do that, frankly. So I haven't learned how to use the learning function of this watch, but it is in the operation manual. The module in this is I believe it's the 1174. Yeah, it's the 1174. And there is a user manual online at Casio at their website, so you can pull that down and get all the operational functions on here. And there's a lot of these watches on eBay. These are not uncommon. This particular one is a little more uncommon than, I would say, the black resin case with the rubber strap. And there's some other versions, the CMD. I think there's a CMD40. There's different numbers for different variations of this as well. I really like the looks of this one. I went after this one. And frankly, I was just looking to turn the TV on and off and maybe turn the volume or the channel, and that was pretty much it. So I might actually consider programming this to run my Blu-ray disc player. So yeah, there's some, with a learning function, you get to do that with an infrared sensor and with an infrared remote control. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, some of the things about this watch, take a look at the display on here, the digital display. It's 90s. It doesn't have a lot of great use of space. I have another one here, the DBC 611. This is another calculator watch. I'm going to go through some of these. And you can see that these watches are pretty similar as far as the amount of space allocated for the time. And I think the DBC 611 is probably the closest when it comes to the display. Now, when it comes down to the thickness of the watch, this is not a thin watch at all. Matter of fact, the height off the wrist, here, I'll put it back on. The height off the wrist is pretty substantial for a Casio. This is more along the lines of some very low-level G-Shocks as far as height off the wrist goes. And when you look at the DBC32, which is my favorite databank of all time, of all the versions that I've had, it's the most easy to use. It's the most legible. We've got a great display on here. I'll put a picture up for both of these. But I think the display on the DBC32 is far superior than the display on the CMD40. But you also have to keep in mind that this is 1992, so what is that? Over 30 years ago, this watch was designed. So, yeah, it's just fantastic. Now, the calculator function, you have the calculator function on here. There's no data bank function on this watch, so you're not entering telephone numbers or other information, alphanumeric type stuff. It's just the calculator, alarm, and I believe stopwatch. Let's go through this. Yes, calculator, alarm, and stopwatch. That's it. There's no light on this watch. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's actually a big oversight. I wish there was a light on the digital display, just something, and the DBC 611 has pretty much a terrible light. It's not very good. The 32 is incredibly good. I really like that. And I think it's the CA50 or the CA53. It does not have a light either. So the CMD40 is not alone in the fact that it doesn't have a light when it comes to a calculator watch. So yeah, that's one thing that's kind of a downer for me because I'm not wearing this watch at night. I really like to wear this watch at night, but without a light, I'm not wearing it at night anyway. So, and it's just a cool looking watch. Now, something that you want to notice on this is take a look at the keyboard, because the keyboard has color-coded keys. And so you have black keys and you have gray colored keys, and all the gray colored keys, which is the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the asterisks and the equal sign at the bottom. Those are all gray. Those are intended to be used for the VCR. You have the play, stop, rewind, fast forward. And And I want to say you could program tracking, because if you remember VCRs, you could program from the remote control how to adjust the tracking plus or minus. And that was really the speed with which the tape was being played over the head of the VCR. So you could control that, and you'd adjust all of that distortion either into the picture or out of the picture. So again, this is showing my age, but there's plenty of guys out there. I know you guys, you've been playing with VCRs all your life. So trying to record things, rewind and stop the scene at the perfect spot, watch it again. So DVDs ruined all that as far as just your coordination, timing ability with VCRs. It was a fun time. So those are some coordination on here. You also have basically a format button. So at the 3 o'clock position, this will get you through the TV, VCR, and then if you want to do a learning remote, you go one more click, and then you're able to do the learning remote piece on that. But that sets everything up. So if you have a power function for a TV, you need to be on the TV function, and that'll show up in the center of the screen. Something I really like about this watch are the buttons on here. These are very good tactile buttons. And, I've had the DBC32 is probably one of the best compromises between buttons that are kind of tall, like on the CA53. I think they're a little bit too tall, maybe too abrupt, a little closer together too as well. But this is kind of the best in between. I have to say the CMD40 are the best feeling buttons that I've had as far as a calculator watch goes from Casio. I think I have a better feel for where the button is, where it stops. It has a rounded plastic cover to it, it feels like, or some kind of plastic cover to it. It just works great. And even the side buttons, I love the feel and the tactile nature of the side buttons on here as well. So I think a watch that's over 30 years old has some of the best button action from a watch that is much more recent, which is the DBC32. Now, the DBC611 has a much flatter display, or flatter keypad on here. I mean, there's really nothing on this keypad as far as tactile awareness. But it does have the buttons, or the tactile portion of that recessed into the keypad. So these have that portion not recessed but sticking out. Just a great set of buttons on here. There's no lume on this. There's no phosphorescent anything on here so that you can see the buttons in low light or no light conditions. But some of the things, basic function, again, you have the stopwatch, you have the calculator, you have the alarm. You also have 12 and 24-hour time that you can use on here. You have the hourly alarm. You have the alarm is a daily alarm. So if you want to set it for a day, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to be able to program a specific date on this alarm. It's just a daily alarm. Just a great overall watch. There's just so much about this. And honestly, the red lens here at the top for the infrared emitter, the whole look, this is such a 90s look. You got to admit, this is pretty dang cool. So again, you can find these on eBay all over the place. Generally, they're going to be the black case, the black resin, or the rubber strap that goes with it. And most of them are in pretty good condition. I didn't find a lot of them being sold were in really rough condition, and they were also costing a lot. I think you can find a pretty good deal if you're interested in a CMW or CMD40. I think you can find one in really good condition. Spend a little time looking around. And I tried to find one here in the United States so the shipping wasn't a big deal. It would get here fairly soon. And just, I just think something kind of local, like an email. It's just something I make a phone call if I need to make a phone call. So consider that when you're looking for a vintage Casio watch. So there you go. Put the comments down below what you think of this. The CMD40, the remote control, learning remote control TV VCR, calculator watch, stopwatch, alarm. Yeah, there's a few things about it that don't quite jive for me, but that's kind of how all Casios are. You have a Casio watch. If you have any Casio watch, there's always something that's just not quite right about the Casio. And so then you go and buy another one. And the next thing you know, you have a fistful of calculator watches. Oh, and by the way, I found another one, and that video is coming out very soon too. So there you go. Put the comments down below what you think of this, calculator watches, and in this case, the CMD40. Check out my website, realidealgear.com. I have some reviewed watches out there, and frankly, I have so many Casios, I think you're going to start to see some of my favorite Casio, my more favorite Casios start to end up on that website because I just can't keep them all. So there you go. My name is Tim. It's been another Real Ideal Gear review, and we'll catch you guys next time.